Renewed hostilities, a dangerous escalation. The long-simmering conflict between Israel and Iran has erupted once more, casting a shadow over the Middle East and raising fears of a wider conflagration. This latest outbreak of violence has not only heightened tensions, but also brought the region to the brink of a potential large-scale war. The latest cycle of violence began with a barrage of missile attacks launched by Iran, targeting Israeli cities and military installations. These attacks were unprecedented in their scale and intensity, causing significant damage and loss of life. This unprecedented escalation marks a dangerous new phase in the decades-old rivalry between the two regional powers. The historical animosity between Israel and Iran has now reached a boiling point, with both sides showing no signs of backing down. As sirens blared and explosions rocked Israeli cities, the world watched with bated breath, uncertain of what the consequences of this latest confrontation might be. The civilian population, caught in the crossfire, scrambled for safety, highlighting the human cost of this conflict. The missile attacks, which caught many by surprise, represent a significant escalation in Iran's strategy. This bold move has forced Israel to reconsider its defensive and offensive strategies, potentially leading to a prolonged and more intense conflict. While Iran has long provided support to militant groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, this direct assault on Israeli soil signals a willingness to engage more directly in the conflict. This shift in tactics could have far-reaching implications for the stability of the entire region. The attacks have been met with condemnation from the international community, with many fearing that they could spark a wider regional war. Diplomatic efforts are now underway to de-escalate the situation, but the path to peace remains uncertain and fraught with challenges. Iran unleashes a barrage of missiles. In a brazen display of military might, Iran launched over 200 missiles towards Israel. The missiles, a mix of short, medium, and long-range projectiles, rained down on Israeli cities, towns, and military bases. Tel Aviv, Israel's bustling commercial center, was among the targets, with air raid sirens sending residents scrambling for shelter. The attacks, which lasted for several hours, caused widespread panic and disruption to daily life. While Israel's Iron Dome defense system intercepted many of the incoming missiles, some managed to penetrate, striking buildings and infrastructure. The attacks caused significant material damage, but the full extent of the destruction is still being assessed. More importantly, the missile barrage claimed the lives of innocent civilians, adding a tragic human cost to the already volatile situation. Israel's retaliation, a measured response. In the aftermath of the Iranian missile attacks, all eyes turned to Israel, anticipating a swift and forceful response. Israel, known for its military prowess and uncompromising stance against those it perceives as enemies, vowed to retaliate. However, despite the calls for immediate and overwhelming force, Israel's initial response has been notably measured, focusing on targeted strikes against Iranian military assets and infrastructure. Israeli airstrikes have targeted Iranian military bases, weapons depots, and command centers, seeking to degrade Iran's military capabilities and deter further attacks. Israel has also emphasized its right to defend itself against aggression, while also stressing the importance of avoiding a wider escalation of the conflict. This measured approach suggests a desire to avoid a full-blown war, at least for now. The world reacts, condemnation and calls for restraint. The international community has reacted with a mixture of condemnation and concern to the latest eruption of violence between Israel and Iran. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has condemned the Iranian missile attacks and reaffirmed its unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself. However, there have also been calls for restraint from both sides, urging a de-escalation of the conflict before it spirals out of control. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the crisis, but no concrete actions were taken. Russia, a key player in the region, has called for dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the conflict, while also expressing understanding for Israel's security concerns. The European Union has also urged restraint and a return to diplomacy, emphasizing the need to protect civilian lives and prevent further suffering. Section 5. A heavy toll, the human cost of conflict. As is often the case in war and conflict, it is innocent civilians who bear the brunt of the suffering. The recent exchange of missile attacks between Iran and Israel has resulted in casualties on both sides, with many lives lost and countless others forever scarred by the violence. Homes have been destroyed, families torn apart, and communities left reeling from the trauma. In Israel, the missile attacks have left a trail of destruction and despair. Families mourn the loss of loved ones, while those who survived the attacks grapple with injuries, both physical and psychological. The constant fear of further attacks has left many living in a state of anxiety and uncertainty. In Iran, the Israeli airstrikes have also taken their toll, with reports of civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. Section 6. Decades of discord, the roots of the Israel-Iran conflict. To understand the current crisis, it is essential to delve into the deep-rooted historical tensions that have long plagued relations between Israel and Iran. The conflict is multi-layered, encompassing religious differences, ideological clashes, and geopolitical rivalries. At its core lies the unresolved issue of Palestinian statehood and the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has become a major point of contention between the two countries. Iran, a predominantly Shia Muslim country, has been a vocal critic of Israel's treatment of Palestinians, viewing it as an oppressive force in the region. Iran has also provided support to Palestinian militant groups like Hamas, further straining relations with Israel. The Iranian government, under its current leadership, views Israel as an illegitimate state and has called for its destruction. Section 7. Russia's calculated gamble in the Middle East. Russia, a major power with significant interests in the Middle East, finds itself in a delicate balancing act as the Israel-Iran conflict escalates. The region's strategic importance cannot be overstated, with its vast energy resources and critical shipping lanes. On the one hand, Russia has sought to maintain cordial relations with both countries, recognizing the importance of each in the region's complex geopolitical landscape. Israel is a key player with advanced technology and military capabilities, while Iran holds significant influence over various proxy groups. On the other hand, Russia sees an opportunity to advance its own interests by playing the role of mediator and power broker. This dual approach allows Russia to leverage its position, gaining favor and strategic advantages from both sides. Russia has condemned the violence and called for restraint from both sides, positioning itself as a voice of reason in a volatile situation. By advocating for peace, Russia aims to present itself as a stabilizing force, enhancing its diplomatic standing on the global stage. However, some analysts believe that Russia may be quietly pleased with the conflict, as it distracts the United States and its allies from other areas of geopolitical importance, such as Ukraine. This diversion allows Russia to operate with less scrutiny and pressure in its own sphere of influence. Russia's ultimate goal is to maintain its influence in the region while preventing a wider conflict that could destabilize the entire Middle East. By carefully navigating this complex situation, Russia aims to solidify its role as a key power broker, ensuring its strategic interests are safeguarded for the future. Section 8. The uncertain path ahead towards peace or further escalation. As the dust settles from the latest round of fighting, the question on everyone's mind is whether this is the beginning of a protracted conflict or a wake-up call that will lead to a negotiated settlement. The scars of war are fresh, and the memories of the recent violence linger heavily in the minds of those affected. The path ahead remains uncertain, with the potential for both further escalation and a de-escalation of hostilities. Diplomatic efforts are underway, but the road to peace is fraught with challenges and obstacles that must be carefully navigated. Much will depend on the actions of the key players involved, both within the region and on the international stage. Their decisions in the coming days and weeks will shape the future of the conflict and determine whether peace is achievable. The international community has a crucial role to play in urging restraint, promoting dialogue, and working towards a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Global leaders must come together to support initiatives that foster understanding and cooperation. The United States, as Israel's closest ally, has a particular responsibility to use its influence to prevent further bloodshed and encourage a return to diplomacy. American leadership can be pivotal in bridging gaps and facilitating meaningful conversations between the conflicting parties. Ultimately, a lasting peace can only be achieved through dialogue, compromise, and a recognition of the legitimate security concerns of both sides. It requires a commitment to understanding and addressing the root causes of the conflict and a willingness to make difficult concessions for the greater good.